Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have a new guest, Akhil Ramesh. He is a fellow at the Pacific Forum. He has worked for premier risk consulting firms, non-profit organizations, and think tanks in New York City and Washington, D.C. He's also a frequent contributor to several journals. Let's welcome Akhil Ramesh. Akhil, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Akhil, the pleasure is all mine. You very quickly decided to come on my channel when I requested you for your thoughts on where you see a split Congress, meaning like Republican-led Congress and a Democratic-led Senate. How does this work for India? Because we know that US-India relations have been blowing hot and blowing cold lately. How do you see this whole thing?
I mean, first of all, it was not a surprise that it's a split. Many of us analysts predicted the split. And the one major takeaway is that there will be many distractions now. Foreign policy will not be the primary focus, especially given that the elections are coming up very soon in another year and a half in 2024. So I think Republicans have a mandate to make sure that they do not let Biden get a second term. So I think their focus will be primarily on Biden and his son. So I think they've already started looking into Hunter Biden.
They have.
So yeah, they will double down on that. So the question is, Biden enjoyed a lot of bipartisanship when it came to China. Will he enjoy the same the next 2 years? Because if he does not have that, India relations could also take a hit. Because I don't know if many analysts observe it this way, but the way I see it is that the US-China competition is one of the main vehicles for which US-India relations could improve. Because that is the only way that the Cold War era idea of India could change. So if the Republicans choose to go after Biden the next year and a half, then US-India relations could also take a pause.
Now, recently Janet Yellen had come visiting to India. Mm-hmm. What was the message she was bringing?
So she was talking about India as an economic partner. That's a first. Because in Washington and in New York, there is always this idea that India can be even a defense partner, but not an economic partner. Because the notorious days of license Raj and how India is perceived as a protectionist country, I think that is changing. So when I heard Janet Yellen said that, I was surprised, and for a moment there, because they are finally seeing India as an economic partner and as an alternative to China. 20 years ago, people would have laughed if you had said that. So I think Yellen was talking about friendshoring and the Indo-Pacific economic framework. So concepts like these are what they're viewing India in the context of.
Now, a Treasury Secretary visiting India is a rare event. I don't remember, the previous one going or previous several ones going, as a matter of fact. What kind of a function that, Secretary of Treasury carry? I mean, he's like the equivalent of a finance minister. And she helps set the fiscal policy. She used to set the monetary policy. Now she's helping set the fiscal policy. And in terms of strengthening ties with India, are they going to have like currency swap facilities? What are your thoughts?
I mean, currency swap facility is not the only one. I mean, Nirmala Sitharaman, the Indian finance minister, was in Washington recently. She was meeting with the IMF, and they had discussions on both the Indian economy and the world economy. And as a developing country, you're always concerned about interest rates. So that's how the conversation started in Washington, D.C. And taking it from there, I think Yellen has more interest in seeing India as a partner. And if you want to see as economic partner, to be precise. So if you want to be America's economic partner, there are a few different vehicles, like whether it's buying more American debt or having a stronger trade relationship, not just by being a recipient of foreign direct investment, but also investing in the country. So if you look at the numbers, it is always China and Japan, and probably a Middle Eastern country, Saudi Arabia, that holds the debt and also invests heavily in the US. That needs to change. India needs to be a global investor, especially in the US. I think Yellen, along with the newly formed CEO grouping, US-India CEO grouping, are actually working towards that.
Now, Akhil, if I remember correctly, during the 2008 crisis, India did put down, I think, $275 billion and bought treasury bonds. I think India is holding somewhere in that ballpark. So do you see that probably going up? Will it go up to like $1 trillion or maybe half a trillion? How do you see that?
That has to go up. I don't know if it'll go up to trillion, but it definitely has to go up. I think that is the economic bond. That's the marriage you essentially need. That's why it's so hard for the US to totally decouple from China. Even though you can move certain businesses out of China, you can diversify them to Vietnam or India and other places. But China holding debt, so much of American debt, I think they're holding them by the so it's definitely not an easy way to get out of.
So, in your opinion, how much is the Chinese? How much of debt, US debt, is China holding? I thought it was 1 trillion or 2 trillion. Is that somewhere in that ballpark?
I need to look at the numbers, but yes, it is the largest holder.
It's in trillions.
Yes, it's in trillions. Yes. Definitely, yes. So it is nowhere compared to India's. I mean, same case with exchange reserves, right? The amount China, even though it's been plunging the past few months and years, actually, since COVID, China still holds a lot of foreign exchange reserves. Even though India is in the top 5, it is not closer to China. China is in trillions and India is still in billions. Similarly, that needs to change.
So I'm going to tie this with the India being taken off of the currency monitoring list now. And now, if India were to say put 225 billion, brings it up to a round number of 500 billion. Because I'm adding the 275 from before and putting 225. India would be very conservative. They can't put more anyway. They only have foreign exchange reserves of 600 billion, give or take. Right. Now, if they put 225 there, they need to have a way from the United States to get that much amount of business. So net equality.
Yeah.
If that were to happen, which would be the segments that US would be, allowing to invest in India?
I mean, for starters, see, I come from Tamil Nadu. So the first company I can think of right now is First Solar. I think he had a meeting with the ambassador this morning, if I'm not wrong. With Indian ambassador, they are about setting up a solar plant. They already started one, but I think they're thinking of expanding in India. I think clean energy has a bright prospect, not just solar, but green hydrogen and others. So clean energy is one, and of course, tech cooperation is always there, but it has been one way. Wherein the GAFA have their own challenges in India. For those who don't know, the GAFA is the Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple. They've had their own challenges in India, and that needs to change. I mean, people talk about Apple making iPhones in India now through Foxconn and diversifying supply chains.
One other company also, right.
Yeah. So I mean, even they have their own challenges. I think we are only seeing the rosy picture, but even the Taiwanese companies, the challenges they've had in both in Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. I think if you speak to the Taiwan delegations, they will tell you how difficult it has been. I think India needs to change that ecosystem, make it a lot more friendlier for American companies to invest as well. Because you can invest all the treasury, and then if American companies want to invest, you're not making it easy.
Akhil, 2 years ago or 1 year ago in the budget, there was a proposal that India put out saying that for companies bringing in new technology as an investment into India, they gave a tax holiday plus a corporate tax of only 15%, 15. And I don't know if the rules have been framed for that. India takes a long time to frame the rules and so on and so forth. And now we're getting a little closer. Do you have any idea as to whether it is like today, if you and I start a company, Akhil Ramesh Sri Iyer Incorporated, and let's say we bring in something new, geothermal energy. I mean, I'm just making it up here. Do you think that there will be like a quick way to single window clearance, some space in some part of India? How does that play out?
I mean, I will be optimistic and say it's much better than it was before. But it is definitely not the easiest. India has not transformed into a Singapore in that sense. You cannot open a company in one day and 8 days later have it registered and everything set up and good to go. We're not there yet. But it's definitely moving in the right direction. But at the state level, there are serious challenges. Speak to any Western diplomat in India privately, and they will tell you how hard it is for their own businesses to operate, and how much extra time they've had to put in, try to get the local laws, through the myriad of local laws passed through. I think, for example, there are states in India that rank as the business-friendly states, especially in the South. But if you ask international investors, how was your experience, that's a total different story. So I think that needs to change. If we were to invest tomorrow, I think it'll be like in the, I don't know if you've seen this Tamil movie called 𝗣𝗂𝘂𝘀𝘀. It's a whole Rajinikanth movie.
Yes.
I don't know if the director was actually poking fun at any administration, but if you want to do good, or if you want to set up a business, there are still so many rent-seeking mechanisms for the politicians, making it much harder.
That's true, and this needs to change. It really needs to change, because if you remember, one of the mantras that Biden brought when he came to power was, he said he wants to unify the tax base, like 15% for many of the countries, and I think many European countries also have signed on. If I remember correctly, I think even Ireland decided to up it from 12% to 15%. I don't know how far that has progressed. Even in US right now, it's still 20% corporate tax. Somewhere India needs to come a little closer. I'm hoping that if India does put the 225 billion that Janet Yellen wants India to, again, this is just a number I'm making up. Yeah. India plays very, very conservative with numbers. Do you think in quid pro quo, at least it will be goaded? Sometimes India doesn't do on its own. It needs to respond. It reacts better than it proacts. Do you think that might pave way for a easier way to start infrastructure companies, such as what we're talking about, clean energy?
I mean, I'm a foreign policy professional, so I could definitely say that India is more responsive in its foreign policy. That needs to change. The past few years, it has been changing, but even then, you're right, it's very conservative moves. And with regards to infrastructure, it's a whole different thing. Manufacturing is a whole different, because I was referring to clean energy manufacturing. Well, that's like panels, or TVs, not infrastructure. That's a whole different can of worms.
Correct.
So infrastructure investment is putting it in India by an international investor. I'm not sure if it's the best thing to do, because there are many Indian companies who are at the bankruptcy courts, having tried the last decade or so, especially with all the reforms happening in the Indian banking sector, trying to consolidate and create a less stressed balance sheet. How infrastructure companies will fare is a whole different question. But yeah, clean energy production is a whole different thing. I mean, there's impetus to diversify the manufacturing of clean energy, capital goods from China. Like every solar panel in India, there's a large amount of it comes from China. Yeah. That needs to change. Same with the US. US, through the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, has big plans for renewable energy. So if you want to install over 1 million solar panels over the course of the next 10 years, you want them to be made in either the US or a friendly shore, not made in China. So they have a lot of pressure from the US-American side to diversify. So they might view India as a viable alternative when it comes to renewable energy production, besides Vietnam, of course.
So manufacturing, infrastructure building, creating a solar panel manufacturing plant, these are kind of a little bit for long-term things. That for that, the environment has to improve a little bit more, is what I'm hearing. Yes. But if you are turnkey projects where you can get some technology, get it in, and step by step you start indigenizing it, that perhaps is a way to go. Would you say that?
I mean, that's what the Indian corporations have done well. The Indian multinational corporations, such as the Tatas, have done it quite well. Back in the day, American companies would have dismissed them. They actually did, as a matter of fact. Like Ford dismissed Tata as a great automobile company. But, maybe I think it was a decade ago when Elon Musk was asked in an interview by Charlie Rose, what do you think of Tata's Nano? And he had very nice things to say, because that's the difference in approach. The old school American thinking of the Fords versus the Musks of today is quite different. And they also identify opportunities in American corporations. So companies like Tata have successfully, formed joint ventures. Of course, there are failures like the Docomo, but they've had also successes, and they've indigenized many products. Maruti Suzuki and Tata are the leading sellers of automobiles in India now. Now Mahindra is also close, probably in the top 3, if I'm not wrong. And you have the Koreans. There are no Americans in the game. So Indians have done a very good job in certain manufacturing and assembly. And will they be able to pull it off in high value-added ones, say like semiconductors, will be the next question.
Actually, you segued me into my last question for this session. Recently, Foxconn and Vedanta have announced a semiconductor fab in Gujarat. This is screaming at me that neither Vedanta nor Foxconn has any roots in semiconductor. And nor is Gujarat a great source for the kind of engineering resources required to do this. What was the thinking behind that?
See, these are the projects that makes everyone in Washington, raise questions on India's true potential or even objectives behind these subsidies and these generous government offers. Are they truly to promote or develop an industry like East Asia did back in the 80s and 90s? Or are they more of a Soviet Union-like practice, creating oligopolies and helping companies that have a lot of debt in their balance sheets write it off through generous subsidies? So when a company that has no background in semiconductor manufacturing, does not have, the ecosystem to even build one, gets into semiconductor manufacturing, you ask those questions. What is that company doing in semiconductor manufacturing? And it's not just Vedanta. I don't want to go against one company. There are other companies similarly that were involved in defense production that made one raise questions on why are they involved in fighter jet productions? They have no background. So I think India still has that legacy of corporations taking advantage of the government's generosity. At the end of the day, it's the taxpayer and the middle class paying the price. So that needs to change.
Thank you so much, Akhil, and food for thought for India, because that's how the world is looking at it. I was surprised too. The only thing that I saw there, a little bit of a glimmer of hope, is that one of the top executives of TSMC has recently joined Foxconn. But the fact remains, Foxconn's image is that of a manufacturing powerhouse.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. Akhil, it was wonderful talking to you. I'm hoping that you'll be back and to share more nuggets of wisdom with our viewers. Viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And please also click on the bell button for notifications. Akhil, my pleasure having you on our channel today. Namaskar.
Thank you so much for having me.